Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. First of all, happy new year. I hope your new year's was amazing. I hope 2023 will be a very good reading year for all y'all. I hope you all reach your Goodreads goal and read a ton of 5-star books. The first video I wanted to do for this year was a January TBR, a very standard TBR. I still have other videos that I haven't done. The end of the year was a little crazy for me, so a couple videos I still want to do. Hopefully you guys are still in the mood for best and worst type videos. But yeah, we're gonna start off with a very simple January TBR. I have not done a goals video, but I will, and one of the things on my goals is to do monthly TBRs and hopefully stick to them to kind of hold myself accountable to something. I don't have a ton of books. I am still trying to be realistic, but I do think that this can be done. Hopefully. So first things first, I do have some carry-ons from last year. I do have the Whispering Skull. This is the second book in the Lockwood and Company series. This I thought was middle grade. It's more young YA, but in this book we follow a group of young teens. This takes place in a world where ghosts and poltergeists and spirits do exist, and it's been a natural occurring phenomena for about 50 years. And England, I don't know if this takes place in this happens in other parts of the world, but this does take place mostly in England, and I think they've also mentioned Scotland has ghost problems as well. But in this world, younger people have a better connection to ghosts, to be able to see them and talk to them. So what a lot of these Ghostbuster investigative companies do is they hire children to do a lot of the legwork. And Lockwood and Company is the only team in England that is without an adult supervisor. It's a business run completely by minors. I really enjoy the concept of this series. I thought a big theme of the series was going to be confronting child labor law violations or something, but not. But it's still a really fun series, and I think I mentioned this in another video, but while each individual book might not be 5 out of 5 stars, I do think the series overall is something that I will look at fondly whenever I finish it. I think there's 4 or 5 books. I don't know if it's a completed series, but this is the second book and I'm enjoying it for the most part. Another book that I picked up around Christmas time that I kind of put completely to the side was A Wizard's Guide in Defensive Baking. I think that's the full title, by Kingfisher. I've been wanting to pick up this author for quite some time because they seem to write a variety of things within SFF, and I wanted to try something, so I picked up this one because I thought it'd be light and fun, and it is. I just wasn't in a reading headspace towards the end of the year. Don't know much about this book up until this point. All I know is that this is a fantasy setting where some people have great sorcerer magic abilities, but we follow a character who is just very good at making bread. Our main character is just really good at baking and talking to bread, and she can fix bread. I don't know, it's part of her magic. I'm not super clear and I don't really remember too much of what I read. And while she's working in her aunt's bakery, she finds a dead body, and I guess there's gonna be a little bit of a mystery. Her unusual abilities might come into play. I have no idea, but this is also something that I'm reading currently on loan. Actually, it was on loan from the library, but I ended up just buying the ebook because my loan bounced. So those 2 books are from last year. Let me get into the books I want to start this month. Because I haven't done a goals video, I have not talked about how I kind of have a little mini monthly bingo board that I want to accomplish. I won't go into it right now, but just know that I do have a monthly bingo board, and these were going to fill some of those squares. One book that I really want to pick up is The Memory of Babel. This is the 3rd book in the Mirror Visitor series by Christelle Dabos. I read the 2nd book, was it last month? Or was it December? Yeah, it has to be December. I absolutely love this series. This is a YA fantasy novel, originally translated from French. In this book, we follow a young woman named Ophelia, and Ophelia is from this ark. Arcs are bits of earth that have kind of separated. They're flying, floating pieces of mass that are kind of suspended in air. She's from an ark called Anima, and she and a lot of other people on her ark, because they're descended from the same familial spirit, have similar kind of abilities, like being able to touch subject something and seeing like the history. A lot of people in anime can like kind of animate or work with like inanimate objects and animate them. Our main character also has this like really unique but not impossible ability to like travel through mirrors, and she is very content at working in this like historical museum. She's kind of keeps to herself, and then she gets engaged to a young man from another arc that is very different culturally from hers. Her family, or her arc where she's from, kind of see each other as this one giant family because again they're descended from the same spirit. Where she is gonna go to marry her fiance is a place called the Pole, and while they are also descended from a different familial spirit, they are much more like at each other's throat trying to vie for power. It's very political type drama, and she's not used to that. She's not used to like families kind of fighting each other. So she's a little bit like fish out of water for the majority of the series so far. So a good part of the series up until this point has been her trying not to get herself killed because of all this political infighting that she's been married into. Family that she marries into is like on the social decline. Sorry about my dog, but is on the social decline, doesn't have a lot of power as it once used to. And her fiance is like the most rigid person ever. There is gonna be a romance in this series, but it is incredibly slow burn for a YA. I know in a lot of YA romance, the authors tend to pair them off really quickly, or it's a very like insta-lovey type thing. Not in this instance. So if you don't like that kind of romance, this might be a little bit more palatable for you. It also doesn't necessarily read YA. Maybe it's because of the French translation. I think this is also good if you are mostly an adult fantasy reader and you want to try something YA, something a little more quick. These do read pretty fast. I'm just gonna pick up books as I go. These are not in any particular order. I have Hemlock Grove by Brian McGreevy. This was a Netflix show, and I think it was eventually removed, which is wild that Netflix wants to remove some of their older like original stuff. Anyways, irrelevant, but this is one of the first like Netflix shows that they produced. This is a horror novel. If it's like anything like the show, at least plot wise, this takes place after the murder of a young girl in this town called Hemlock Grove, and a bunch of people are kind of involved about like who could have done it. We have werewolf, at least one werewolf in this book, as well as the show has vampires, so I'm assuming there's also vampires. I am kind of hesitant, and I'm going to be a little bit more critical with this book because I do know that there's some content in here that would probably not fly if this book was published today. I had this on my shelves for quite some time, and I want to read it, and if I don't like it, I'll get rid of it. I have The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I've heard mixed things about this mystery thriller author, but I did find this at Goodwill, and I wanted to give her a try. A lot of the like fantasy that I read does have a mystery element sometimes, but I do want to pick up more mystery thrillers without like a fantastical element. Hopefully this doesn't have a fantastical element, because I hate that. I hate when a book is like for the most part contemporary and then there's like a weird kind of twist at the end. I hate that so much. This next book will be a reread, and I do want to reread more books in general this year. So I have The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This series in general usually gets its like praise even from people that don't really like fantasy romance, especially YA fantasy romance. And from what I remember of this first book, I really enjoyed it. I never continued on with the series, which is a big reason why I want to reread this, because I don't remember a lot. But something that this book did really well, and that I don't see, or I haven't really seen anyone attempt to do something similar, at least in YA, is that our main character is a princess, and she's about to get married to this prince from like another kingdom, and she does not want to do that, so she runs away with like her like handmaiden or something. And while she's on the run, the prince that she was going to marry goes on the hunt to like find her. That sounds very like nefarious, but he wants to find her, and a assassin or some hired person is also on the hunt looking for her for other reasons. And you do read from both of these perspectives, the prince and like the hunter, but you don't know which is which. I think I remember who's who still, but despite that, it was really well done, and the twist got me personally. You might be able to guess who's who by reading the perspectives, but I really enjoyed that concept, and I would like to continue on with the series, but I have to reread it because I don't remember much other than like the big twist. So yeah, one of my big goals this year is to read more sci-fi. I tend to pick up more fantasy than sci-fi. I read more sci-fantasy than sci-fi. And in general, I think I'm pretty lenient, or I end up liking sci-fi more than the fantasy books that I pick up. So I have The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. I'm assuming this book was popular at the time of its release and did get its accolades. That being said, I don't see a ton of people talking about it. From what I understand, this is about a group of people that get sent to a newly discovered planet to maybe like interact with like the local alien species that lives there. And they send like a really unique cast of characters to go on this space journey. I don't know if it takes place in space or they are already at this new planet. I don't really know the details, but they send like a Jesuit priest, astronomers, physicians, engineers, and this is like the quote, not me, but a child prostitute turned computer expert. And it says, this motley combination of agnostics, true believers, and misfits become the first to explore the Alpha Centauri world of Rocket. I don't know how to pronounce that planet, with both enlightening and disastrous results, vivid and engaging. And from reading like the blurbs in the back, I see that this is actually told in flashbacks. I love the idea of like first contact and the like space journey, all that kind of stuff. I think this will be a good choice. Next, I have a very popular book from a very popular author. I know everyone's going to be reading his new stuff at the beginning of this month, but I have Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I mostly want to read this, one, because I just want to read more of his work, but I had a really good time vlogging and sharing my experience reading the first Mistborn Final Empire, that book, and I kind of want to do the same with this one. I don't really know the details of this book. I'm assuming it's like political intrigue. I can see we follow 3 characters at least that have some part to play in this plot, but again, I don't know the details. I don't really want to know the details. I believe this is his first novel. I could be wrong, feel free to like correct me on that, but I always like trying authors' earlier work before diving into their newer stuff. So hopefully I will get to this as well, and I would like to vlog it on top of that. And rounding out for fantasy, I have The Queen's Resistance. This is the sequel to The Queen's Rising, which was a very surprising read for me last year. I really enjoyed a good chunk of the first book when I read it last year. So I kind of just want to quickly get back into the second book before I like forget everything. When I read the first book, I thought it ended on a well enough note that it did not need like a sequel, unless this is a companion, but I think this is supposed to be a sequel. Any unanswered questions from the last book I thought could have just been left to readers' imagination where they'd go next, but there's a sequel, so we'll see how that works. I think we all know the history of like books that don't need sequels getting sequels. Hopefully I like it. If I don't, I'm more than okay with getting rid of this one and keeping the first one, because the first one was fine as it was. I totally forgot to mention the plot of the first book was we follow a young woman named Brianna. Yeah, her name is Brianna. She comes from a country that really appreciates the arts, and there's like 5 major arts, like music, comedy, wit, stuff like that. And when you're young, you enter these art schools kind of already knowing what your passion would be, but Brianna does not. Like every year she like switches her passion, pretty much just settles on one because she failed at the other completely. And it's about like graduation time, like when her final project is due, after 7 years of supposed to be studying her one passion, but since she like flip-flopped throughout her 7 years, she's kind of not up to par, and she ends up not getting like a patron for her passion. So Brianna doesn't get a patron after she's kind of like graduated. She doesn't really know what to do or where to go, and then she kind of gets wrapped up in this other political drama from a neighboring country. It doesn't sound super cohesive, but I promise the author made it work. I really loved the concept of like a passion and like studying that in a very like school academic kind of way. I really enjoyed that aspect of the first book, and hopefully there's more of that in the second book, because I like that a little bit more than like the political drama that she got involved in. And these last 2 books that I'm going to talk about kind of pair in a way. I want to read more classics this year, so I'm finally going to read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I did attempt to read this, but I just wasn't like in the mood to read classics at the time. Obviously this is like the OG enemies to lovers. A lot of people still like stand by this book. I really want to get into it and like love it as much as everyone else. I don't really need to talk on this more. So yes, this is on my TBR. This next book has a similar vibe with like similar elements. I have Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. This is historical fiction about a young woman. She's one of the first female students at Oxford University, and a big part of her scholarship is to help recruit men into the women's suffrage movement. There's one specific man that she has to really convince or like, you know, get to know, and I'm assuming he's her love interest. I do know that there's companion novels, so hopefully if I like this one, I'll pick up the other ones. I am usually not like critical or like hypercritical when it comes to like romance or like any type of romance really. I am still gonna like see how a modern day author approaches the women's suffrage movement at the time, since it wasn't very like intersectional. And I normally wouldn't be hypercritical, but I'm assuming that's gonna be a huge part of this book, so that's something that I'm gonna keep my eye out for. But we'll see how like the author approaches like all of that. So yeah, so those are all the books I have on my physical TBR. If you've ever seen any of my other wrap-ups, I do tend to randomly pick up like a Kindle book or a random like library audiobook to do or to listen to while I do chores, and those aren't usually on my TBRs. So I might also probably pick up an audiobook. I do think I have like a Lindsay Sands like historical fiction waiting in my Libby app, and I might also kind of pick up a random like indie fantasy author while browsing like ebooks on Amazon. So, and there are some other like vlog ideas that I kind of want to do that don't really include any of these books, so hopefully I'll read this and more. But yes, that is my first TBR of 2023. Hopefully I get to all of it. Feel free to talk to me in the comments about anything that I've talked about. I'd like to hear anything that you're planning to read this month. Are you planning to read a lot? I kind of want to start the month off reading a ton. I think most of us do as well. So yeah, feel free to talk to me down below in the comments. I will also link all my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.